And we're back for another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here to have another conversation I'm hoping helps your business grow. All right, we have covered a whole lot of different types of entrepreneurship. We have talked about, 450 episodes later, there's not a whole lot we haven't talked about. Now, one of the things that has, in my opinion, has been underserved in our feed is things that work in and around the real estate space and help entrepreneurs that own stuff, rent it out, lease it out, do a lot of different things. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. And I'm happy to be here with yet another amazing company that's here in my hometown. And for all of you listeners in the 190 countries that have tuned in to Startup Hustle, I want to thank you for that, but we're going to keep it local today. So before we get too far into that, I do want to let you know that today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Tesseract Ventures. Tesseract Ventures helps companies become smarter, better connected, and more efficient through next generation robotics, 21st century software, and radically connected platforms. You can visit tesseractventures.io to learn more, or you can click the link in the show notes. Now, as promised, I've got someone here to have an amazing conversation. We're going to talk about property management automation startups. And before we get started, say that 5 times real quick, listeners, because it's definitely a lot of words. But with me today, I've got Paul Worcester, and Paul is the co-founder of Simplifyy. Once again, a link in the show notes. Let's just go ahead. And Paul, welcome to Startup Hustle.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And now, always love to start a show by asking our guest about your backstory. So why don't we go ahead and what brought you to us today, Paul?
Yeah, I grew up in the state of Oregon and had no entrepreneurial pursuits or mindset until about age 20, 21. And did a t-shirt company with a friend, tailgatertees.com. We sold about 1,000 t-shirts, and then that business went away. My wife and I did some direct selling, and that's where we really learned what it was to be communicate and start a business. And so at 2006, at age 24, my 2 younger brothers and we really went into business together buying multifamily properties. So my dad gave us his life savings of $200,000. He lent us the money, and we went out and started trying to buy small, 2 to 4 unit multifamily properties. And so almost immediately, we ended up relocating from Eugene, Oregon, out to Kansas City. So we moved out here in 2007 with $200,000. And long story short, over the next 13 years, we ended up acquiring 4,000 apartment units here in the greater metro area. We syndicated those. So we did a Regulation D offerings with accredited investors. We raised about $80 million along the way. We became one of the top 10 largest apartment owner operators here in Kansas City. But we had to run these apartments, right? We bought these apartments, but we had to run them. And we initially tried to have someone else do the property management. It didn't go well. And so we ended up creating our own property management company. And so we started that in approximately 2010 and grew that over the years. And we ended up with about 140 employees, very traditional. If you're familiar with that space, property management, we were just like everybody else. And so I experienced from the owner side, from the investor side, seeing all of our investors. And so a really good vantage point. I saw the pain in that industry. And so I ended up meeting Jake, my co-founder, and many conversations turned into a partnership, and we founded Simplifyy as a response, as a reaction to the pain that I had experienced in the property management space. And Jake has a background in technology, and so we partnered to create Simplifyy. And
necessity is certainly the mother of invention for many people. So many so many conversations with so many different founders, and any software or any business has to solve a problem. So, let's be a little more specific about what some of the problems that you're solving, like what are some of the problems that Simplifyy. And by the way, if you want to check out Simplifyy, there is a link in the show notes. It's spelled Simplifyy, except for it has 2y's.com. So yeah, but more specifically, so what are the true pain points that a multifamily unit owner experiences? Where's the inefficiency?
Yeah, I'll start a little bit high level, and then we can go as deep as we want into the weeds. But the quickest analogy I can make, if you're not familiar with the property management space, is I think of the ride sharing industry or the taxi industry, and probably the mid 2005, maybe 2010, in that area. There's lots of companies that were working with taxi cab companies in the technology space, right? They were innovating, but right coming around the corner, Uber and Lyft were about to just completely destroy and disrupt that market. That's how I see the property management industry today. There are literally hundreds of prop tech companies collaborating with, working with property management companies. It's been going on for a long, long time. But I think over the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to completely change. It's going to change faster and in a much larger amount than it's happened in the last 20 years. And the way that'll happen is, I hope Simplifyy is one of these, but there will be a company that steps in as a simple end-to-end solution. They offer a better, faster, cheaper service than what is available, and they do it. You don't even have to think about it. Our model is, we're trying to model this after, Jeff Bezos's Amazon Prime, where if you're a property management, company, you own real estate, it would be irresponsible for you to not use Simplifyy. That's what we're trying to build. And all the other companies, to my knowledge, in our space are doing a niche play, right? They're meeting some component. So we can get, Matt, very, very much into the weeds, leasing and maintenance and resident retention, and how do you collect rent and process evictions, and on. The entire ecosystem of that property management space. We're the only ones, to my knowledge, that have stepped in and said, we will be the one-stop end-to-end solution for an owner. So we actually replace property management, whereas all of our competitors in the prop tech space, actually, in my opinion, the fatal flaw is they've picked the wrong customer. So our customer is the owner, which is the decision maker ultimately. And our competitors, the niche players in prop tech, their customer is actually the property management company. There's 250,000 property management companies in the United States right now. I think they're going to go the way of the taxi cab companies, and they're going to basically disappear over the next 10 years.
So one of the things that I got to feel like having a whole bunch of units in order to model test what you were building was helpful along the way. How did that affect the evolution or the quality of your product, especially early?
Well, we are early, so I want to make that very clear. We did some beta testing last year, but we founded the company in October of last year, so we are a year old. We signed up our first customers in the May-June timeframe of this year, so we just hit revenue this year, and we're working on a little over 1,000 units right now, and we're approaching about 100,000 a month in monthly recurring revenue. But we are very, very new as a company, hitting revenue and growing. And so I would say we are daily learning, evolving, fixing things. Customers are asking about, a certain feature, and we're having to weigh all those things. We're very fluid. But I think as a foundation, we've relied on, I have 14 years of prior experience. I know that space very, very well. And so I know the major pain points. I know them pretty well.
Well, first off, congratulations, because I think a lot of people that go to build anything software don't understand how difficult the path to revenue is, especially early. As the founder of Gigabook, I mean, we went 2 years before we collected $1, and that's the way it goes. So you guys are doing a great job, and that's a great growth process. Now, any story that ends in success, or honestly is interesting, has some kind of guide involved in it. And now, who's mentored, partnered, or what have you modeled your business after that's been impactful?
Well, I would say that the guide, I don't know if this is really answering your question the way you mean to, but this is what comes to mind. The guide for Jake and I is the pain of the owners. If you own large, portfolio of single family investments, or you own apartment communities, the guide is just how unhappy they have been. I'm a real estate owner myself. I've been for many, many years. I mean, if you're in that space, I challenge really anybody to find a property management company that they just love. That's just so rare, and it's just really lacking for a great experience when you're, whether it be it the employee that works in the space. There's a lot of really wasteful, repetitive work. The renter, the resident in the space. If you're a renter and you rented in the 1960s or 70s or 80s, you basically have rented in 2020. The experience has not really gotten any better. It's a big deal that we offer online payments, in the recent years. That was like a big industry thing. The experience has really not gotten better. And then as an owner, so if you're an investor, the reporting, the data that you want to understand, you might pay $30 million for an apartment community, and you don't know what the heck's going on at that property. I mean, you've got this massive investment, and you don't have a clue of what's really going on at the property. And so Simplifyy tries to solve two main problems for the owner. Is number one, we just guarantee that the owner will make more cash flow because we've introduced automation to a bunch of manual processes. And then the second thing is we're just going to give you radically better data. We're going to show you what's going on at that property, be it the condition of the physical asset or the renter, the satisfaction and the experience of the renter. We're going to give you data insights into those two things.
What are a few of the more useful or popular automations that are built into Simplifyy?
So I'll start with leasing. That's kind of the first thing in the process that you have a piece of real estate. The first thing is, let's assume it's not occupied. You've got to go out into the market. You've got to say, hey, I've got a unit that's rent ready, and it's got to fit a person that is of the right timing, and they're looking for that location of the city, maybe that size of unit, that unit type, maybe a 2-bedroom, and in the price range. And you've got all those things have to come together, and you've got to offer a seamless experience. So the way it's been for many, many years is atrocious. I mean, I'll give you one tiny example of how horrible this experience is today. Typically today, if you rent an apartment, you're going to go on to an internet listing service like apartments.com. It's a glorified phone book, and you're going to give your information, and they're going to spew it out to multiple apartment management companies. You're going to get bombarded with calls, and then you're going to play the game of, now we're going to play phone tag. Maybe email tag. I'm going to email you. You're going to email me. Hey, can I set a time to go see it this Friday at 4:00? No, I have another showing at 4. Can you do 3? No, I have a doctor's appointment, and on and on and on. And it's just a horrific experience. So what Simplifyy has done, we're very early in this process, but we've already leased in excess of 200 units doing this already. So we've automated a lot of the finding you when you have a need. So we'll put out native digital advertising like a business would. So most apartment communities don't really advertise or market like a business. They do a totally separate thing through internet listing services, which is a waste of money. So we'll find that lead. We're very good at gifted at responsibly monitoring and understanding our spend to bring that unit available when you're looking. And then we will in real time hand it over to our early AI is helping ask basic questions. When do you want to move? How much you want to pay? What part of the city? What unit type? Just really basic information. And what's your phone number? That kind of stuff. Then it seamlessly hands that over. The renter would never know when this takes place, but at some point it hands over to one of our 24/7 concierge people, and they're going to walk them through. And they're going to, take over with the human side. They could be on the phone, but about 80 to 90% of these are actually through SMS text message. And that's where we built the core software to live. And so then here's the power of it. I'm a renter. The simple question is, I've given you some basic information. Then we ask, when do you want to see your next home? When do you want to see your unit? And there is no wrong answer after that. You can basically see it anytime you want, 24/7, and you get to see it on your own terms. So most renters, they actually hate to be shown a unit by a leasing agent. It's very cumbersome to get that, that timing to work out. You might have just gotten off work. You have to meet up with your girlfriend or your wife. You don't really want to coordinate through someone else's schedule. You just want to go see the unit. Hey, I can go see where the kitchen is. Tell me what the features are, the price. I'm an adult. I can make my own decision. We are really one of the first companies to really bring that to market, where we lease units without a leasing agent actually physically showing the units.
Okay. Well, I mean, that, one of the things that's important, and so many people overlook, saving money is making money. And anytime you can create an efficiency, one of the things that I learned as well, and I'm sure you're experiencing this, is, you talk about property management, but being able to put tenants or potential tenants in front of a property owner is really valuable. And that will have I'm sure that has a big effect on the way that your users view your value proposition. And I mean, do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, I mean, there are leasing solutions out there. There are payment processing solutions. There are maintenance solutions. There's smart home solutions. There are these fractured pieces that they're like Frankenstein. They just get cobbled together and they don't really work together. And so the value we will really bring, we do leasing. That's true. So do some other people. But leasing is just one part of the entire ecosystem. As soon as they sign the lease and move in, it's like, well, wait a minute, it's not a lease anymore. They're an actual resident. They've got to be handed off to the next step, which is we've got to treat them like a customer and take care of them. When they have a maintenance work order, we've got to be responsive and communicate really well. Simplifyy holds all of that in our software stack, and so it never leaves. It doesn't go. The industry today, you come in on a lease, then your data's got to be transferred over here, and then the next company only does this part, so you got to stop here and add here, and it doesn't really work well.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up is, for many early stage, a lot of people build software platforms to create efficiency. And one of the lessons I learned Gigabook, online appointment booking, you use it to schedule this spot. And the issue that comes with a lot of that stuff is the potential user. Like I said, saving money is making money. They look at the expense of your software platform being completely different. Like, you could save someone $10 on the back end or put $10 in the cash register on the front end. It's $10 either way. But the way that the user or the person that pays your recurring bills or however views it on the front end, if you're driving revenue, they seem to be a lot more willing to pay. And, they look at it more as like a marketing expense. And, once again, $10 here or $10 on the other side, it's still $10. And, But what I found in my experience, not only myself, but also in discussions with others, is the path to revenue is a lot less treacherous when you're doing something that, like I said, the efficiency that's created on the back end is just, for whatever reason, paying users take a different approach to that. And it's like they almost said, like they look at it as a marketing expense as opposed to, so, like I give you an example, Gigabook, it's $15 a month for an account. And now if that was, it doesn't matter what you do. Let's just say you're a masseuse. I could get a lot more money if the platform was filling the massage table with people and looked at it, if it was driving revenue rather than creating efficiency on the back end, even if those values are the same, like even if the savings is the same as the revenue it creates, you still get a different viewpoint of it. So, that's just a little input for those of you that are thinking about building something. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of technology you can build. And if you believe that there's nothing more human than technology, go check out what the inventors, engineers, and creatives are building over at tesseractventures.io. From robots to flexible tech solutions for construction and beyond, the Tesseract team dreams it and makes it come to life. Have you run across the Tesseract folks here in KC before?
I've not met with them. I've heard of them, but I've not met with them.
Yeah, they do some really cool stuff. And some of it's not quite related to property management, but they do have some really cool robots and different stuff. And go using the link in the show notes and go checking out what they're doing. I think that's one of Kansas City's cool startups, and gotten to know John, the founder, who does a really great job over there. Also someone that I can sit down and have a beer with and complain about being an entrepreneur on some days. Speaking of that, so as entrepreneurs, we often have a plan. And, we love quoting Mike Tyson on Startup Hustle, because everyone had a plan until they got punched in the face. So let's talk a little bit about your plan. Like I said, we come into stuff with a plan, and then we realize that only X% of that plan is actually either comes true, is usable, or doesn't need to just be thrown away. What did your planning process look like when you were getting into Simplifyy?
Yeah, well, with humility, what we are building today was not what we planned. So
that happens a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. We've radically pivoted 2 to 3 times in about 18 months. So when we first were building the early, beta, before we even really founded the company last year, and just testing it on a few units and with some renters, we did have the intent to go in, which I think I would advise anyone in a startup to get in as quickly as possible and start getting, feedback and customer experience and revenue. And that was our plan. And I believe it was very fortunate that we had so much difficulty. Other industries and talk with a lot of folks in the space, Matt, more than I, but this is probably a theme that occurs, I would imagine. So we entered the space. We were going to be a communication, niche piece. We're going to own the communication between the renter and the management. And that was the core software that we early built. The problem is that there's about a half dozen, 6 or 8 legacy players built on accounting software, from some of them decades ago and some of them more recent. And they own the everything flows through them. Every first question is, do you use Resman, Yardi, Appfolio, Buildium, OneSite? Those are the big, legacy companies. Do you use them? And what we found is it was a nightmare trying to work through them. So we spent thousands of dollars trying to get, open into their APIs. They would return emails in 3 weeks. We weren't important. And finally, after enough money and months, we basically looked, Jake and I were talking, we're like, wait a minute, why are we doing this? This is literally what every other company does. Why don't we just go around these guys? And so there was another stage in there too that I'm probably forgetting, but basically what we evolved into is we are a total solution now. Now it didn't take, a small amount of money. We invested $5 million of founder money, really almost before we'd have any revenue. Because we have a end-to-end solution that is realistically like 10 or 15 businesses in one. What we call a feature, there are many other businesses that's an entire business model and product that they offer. And we did not actually plan that, but and I would not recommend doing that because it's very expensive. But I believe the thesis that Jake and I had from last year is unchanged, and it is that in the end, the winners of this disruptive period right now, the people the groups that will be there standing at the end, are the folks that will offer a simple, fast, easy solution at a much lower price point where the customer doesn't have to think. They don't have to ask, a million questions and vet you, and they just go to the website. It's very, very simple how it works, and they offer a simple, seamless end-to-end solution. Right now, the typical, people don't know this, the typical apartment community has in the range of 15 to 25 different technology pieces working. Now, these are not minor things. I'm talking about entire companies, industries are one of those 15. And there's 15 to 25 that a management company or an owner has to juggle and keep track of. And by the way, one goes out of business, and then you got to say, well, who's the next one in this space? And it is an absolute nightmare to try and juggle that. With Simplifyy, they don't have to ask any of that. It's just, what do I pay? What are you going to deliver? And I don't worry about any of the back end partners in that ecosystem, because Simplifyy is the first company that steps up and says, hey, we will own the accountability at the bottom line cash flow level. So you pay us a monthly per unit per month of $75 to $100 per unit per month, and everything else is covered outside of basically real estate taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance.
So that, and the whole idea of daisy chaining 10 different things, that's not uncommon. That's I've had so many people that they're talking about anything, regardless of what the platform is, and they're like, it only does 90% of what I need it to do. I'm like, man, that's a huge win. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's a huge win, because most people have a whole. So it's so common that literally, like, one of the more common web platforms out there, Zapier, exists just to connect things to other things. And I use it because that's a challenge. And as a software developer, there is literally an unlimited amount of things that you can connect to your platform back and forth. So that's going to be an interesting, that's literally a huge problem that does exist and continues to need to be solved. All right. So it's one thing to have a plan. It's another thing to have a product. You can have a great product. You can do a whole lot of things, but if you're not any good at selling it, then it really doesn't matter. I worked in and around the music industry for over a decade. And I have this theory that the world's greatest album was never heard because it was marketed so poorly. And that could very much be the case. We'll never know. I might be right and I might be wrong, but there's so many things that end up in the trash can because they weren't marketed well. Now, that said, you guys seem to have gotten off to a good start, and congratulations once again with that. But how did you go about marketing and selling your Simplifyy?
Well, and here we are, basically almost November 2020, and we started, a year ago. We first hit revenue May, June. So we are very early in this. And again, with all humility, we are literally in process of working this out, Matt. So we have pivoted, a few times on our messaging. I don't think we're where we want to be on our messaging now. It's not simple enough. You mentioned the story branding as a model to kind of share the message and take the customer through that process. We're not doing a good enough job of that. I think we're on a good trajectory and we're in the right direction. I think our customers are very happy, but I think we over the next year we'll get better and better at just in a simple, whether it's visuals on our website, whether it's a sentence, an explainer video, we'll clarify how it works, because the challenge we have, and it's a blessing and it's a curse. So we are able to offer features and pricing and technology that no competitor has. I mean, they're literally they're not even out there in the market. Well, that's also works against us, because what we're the first to offer stuff, the disruptive folks. We're talking with people and their eyes sort of gloss over and they're like, what? Like, I didn't even know that is a feature. Like, I didn't even know that existed, that you could do that. And you're talking about, these different things. So we've got to simplify our message. Probably the dozens of features that we offer, it's only going to be a half dozen or so that are going to be the real important ones. I can't say right now that we know exactly which ones are going to be those ones to call out. It's a work in progress. We're getting better and better at it. And we're not, so our customer, again, every industry is different. Our customer is the opposite of tech savvy, probably some of the very last human beings in the world as an industry to adopt technology. If you're in real estate and you're heavy into real estate, you are one of the last bastions of untouched, technology. And so we have to really take the automation, take the technology, and not use that language. We need to just explain it in ways that, how does your life get better? Oh, I make more money. Oh, you're going to give me better data. Okay, I can understand that. That's what we're trying to do and get better at, Matt.
I'm a huge advocate of my personal belief, and you echoed the sentiment, is, the most successful software platforms that exist now and the ones that will in the future are the ones that get a new user in quickly. And they can, so I have a rule. I say 5 or 75. So can a 5-year-old figure this out, or can a 75-year-old figure this out? And I have one of both in my family. So I got my dad, and I got a couple kids in that age range. So, and it really does all begin with simplicity. Now, in regards to marketing and a marketing message, that's something I've been very obsessive over the last couple of years. And one of the things that I've learned, and for those of you listening, is whenever you're marketing a product or you're messaging, people buy benefits. They don't buy features. So the message of what that does, and sometimes it's not a fully tangible thing, because people often save money. So I would imagine that in many ways that people that manage multi-family units, that there's a lot of, that could probably drive you crazy on several days. So, and I went through this when we were marketing and launching Gigabook. I thought everyone would be so excited to have this, to create all this efficiency in and around their business. And then after talking to our users, I realized that they really just love the peace of mind.
Yes.
There was all these little things that they didn't want to do, and they didn't want to do. So, that in many of our early marketing campaigns, unchain yourself from the business. And, because so many people, they just felt like they were literally chained to the business. They were answering calls all day, all night, all this, all that. And then on top of it, because half of people that own a small business are a sole proprietor and they may not have that be the actual entity, but it's just them. So when they're providing those services, and we use a massage therapist earlier as an example, that person can't answer the phone, or at least if your massage therapist is answering calls in the middle of your session, you're probably not going to book again. So, that peace of mind went a lot of different ways, and without peace of mind, not much has a whole lot of flavor. So yeah, for those of you listening, I mean, that was, I think, probably a key takeaway from myself when it comes to marketing stuff. So if you focus on the benefits that your product offers. And then another thing too is, we're in this hyper millennial culture, and you talk about the messaging. It's got to be so simple. Like if you can't, we were talking about, you mentioned the story brand, and one of the story brand is selling by telling the story, but But the main part of it does involve simplicity. So if you can't explain what your business does in one line, then you've overcomplicated it. So, and that's the challenge. Now, if I go out and I ask 100 business owners to do that, 90 of them are not going to be able to. They're usually like, well, we do blah, 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 blah. Like 2 minutes later, you talk about the eyes glazing over and you're like, dude, you lost me.
And it is
so, and then on top,
that is.
Oh, well, dude, it is hard. Yeah, it is hard. Yeah. Oh, trust me. I know it can take years. Yeah. And that's the thing is, and that awareness does come from the user perspective, because those are the people that drive the revenue. They're the ones that determine whether you're going to be successful or not. So listen to your users and ask them why they use the platform. And then on top of that, so I mentioned the hyper millennial approach. People scroll. It's just like, you're just scrolling on phones past, messages and messages and messages. So I have a flashcard test. And if you can't absorb the message that you're trying to give to anyone in the same amount of time that you would see a flashcard, just a simple flashcard, so take your message, write it down or show it to someone for 2 seconds and then turn it away. Say, what'd you see? So ask them what they got out of it, and then do it for a second, and then do it for half a second, almost just like, and see how it goes. Because a lot of people want to make marketing images and stuff like that, and they feel like they got to tell the whole story in an Instagram post. No one's reading that 8-point font on their mobile device, So, the whole purpose of your messaging is to get people to click to the next step, to go somewhere else where you can maybe expand on it a little bit. And, there's just so many different things. And I find marketing to be simply complex these days, because now you're like, what platform are we on? How do we want to do it? Do we want to do a video? Do we want to still image? Do we want to do a portfolio? Do we want to do a slideshow? It's like, my God. And you know what? We're probably only a few years away from now. We're going to need to have the augmented reality ad and the 3D. And I just can't, I always think about when R2D2 is sending his message with Princess Leia out, I'm going to have to make a 3D version of myself. God forbid that ever have to happen. So my wife might have some issues with that too. She's probably got enough on her hands dealing with one of me. All right. So entrepreneurship, it changes you. It doesn't matter whether you have a good experience with it, a bad experience. What are a few things that you've learned over this last year and a half that have transformed you either as a leader, a professional, or a person?
Yeah, I'll go back a little further. I mean, starting out in my early 20s, I'm a totally different person as a result of being an entrepreneur. I've been challenged and grown and been through a lot of disappointment, and then wins and losses, and been around a lot of people, managed people in a formal sense, and then led and learned from mentors. And so I'm a very different person. I really don't know. I'm 30, almost 39 now, and I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't taken the entrepreneurial journey. Now, in the last year in starting Simplifyy, I think you just hit on probably the biggest thing. I'm learning it right now. I have not learned this lesson. I am learning it every day, which is, the marketing, if you want to call it marketing, it doesn't impact someone. They don't think of their being marketed to. It's just natural. It's like breathing. And they just kind of, like you said, they scroll, they go to the website, or they're talking with our salespeople, and it's just very natural. It's just like, oh, you help me with this. Okay. How does it work? What's the next step? And that is such an art and a science and a challenge to get to that point. But the companies that do that really, really well, I mean, there are companies, very, very, very successful companies now. Apple does really, really great marketing, and they do a bunch of commercials and stuff. There are also companies that do almost no marketing, paid, and they are very profitable, lots of revenue. And so we're trying to find, I think every company is finding, where are we? Some will do more marketing, some will do less, but simple, communication to our customer and then our employees, so that our employees and our customers are talking about and hearing the same messaging. I think that's the biggest thing we're working on as a company.
One of the things that people ask me, and I once again use Gigabook as an example. People are like, "What are you doing with social media?" I'm like, "Not much." They're like, "Why not?" Because appointment software doesn't go viral. And neither does property management automation solutions, and so that makes it a little more challenging. Now, the things you mentioned that often have a brand. Now, look, it's easy people have a love-hate with their phone. So it's a little easier for Apple to go viral. And then there are just certain things, I mentioned working in and around the music industry. It's easy to make music go viral. People love music, and whether they love it or they hate it, they like to talk about it. Religion, sex, politics, children, kittens. These are things that are, if I post a picture of my kids doing something, I'll get 3 times more likes than if I do something else. It's just the way it goes. So yeah, and finding that, so I have 3 words that I encourage people to embrace when it comes to figuring out their marketing: test, test, test. Now, I end my episodes of Startup Hustle, and I want to remind everyone, I'm not the only host of Startup Hustle these days. Check out some of the episodes on e-commerce and Amazon with Andrew Morgans. Check out Lauren Conaway, who absolutely makes me smile at the beginning of every one of her episodes, and also keeps me in line when we're not on air. So before, I end my episodes with Founders Freestyle, and we're going to go to that in a second. I do once again want to thank Tesseract for sponsoring this episode of Startup Hustle. Tesseract's brought Silicon Valley level innovation to the Midwest. They enable businesses just like yours to defy the boundaries of space and time through next generation technologies. Visit tesseractventures.io to learn more, or click on the link in the show notes. Very, very happy and proud to share Kansas City with them, and you as well, man. I'm really excited that you guys. We have a really cool entrepreneur scene here in Kansas City. We fly so far below the radar, and there's a lot of that. And that's been one of the fun things about Startup Hustle, is getting to help shine a spotlight on cool people doing cool stuff. Now, as promised, we do the Founders Freestyle to end things on my episodes. And I'd like to hear what's the best advice that you could give to early stage startup founders based on what you've learned at Simplifyy?
If I was giving advice to someone starting out, I would say, understand your values and purpose of what you're as a group of people. And then understand the problem that you're trying to solve. I think you said it great. A feature versus, are you really solving a real problem? And sometimes, businesses or things sound cool, and it's like, oh, that's cool. Well, like you said, test going out into the market and actually solving a real problem. Those are the probably some of the best advice I would think of to give someone.
Thank you, sir. So a couple takeaways I had from this episode. Well, don't be afraid to pivot. Most people do. Most people change things. Another thing is don't overbuild early. I had someone mention on a show recently. It said, "Oh, I don't build MVPs. I build MLPs, minimally lovable product." And I thought that was really good advice, because, much like you encountered, you can get into things and, you start to look at it. You haven't built anything yet. And you're like, gosh, there's all these different problems to solve. Talk to the people that want to use it and ask them, say, what's the biggest problem you need to solve in your business? Ask them that exact question. Like, whether it's multifamily, anything, or this or that, go out and talk to the people that would potentially use it and say, what isn't that great about your business? What could I help you solve? And then listen for the echo. And when I say listen for the echo, you're going to hear a bunch of different things, but listen to that resounding echo that's just there and there and there and there and there. You figure out where it's going to be, and that's the problem you want to solve. And then you got to figure out if that's worth any money. So there are lots of problems we're solving that aren't really monetizable. And, like I said, as you're talking to those people, say, what is the value of that solution? How much money would that save you? A lot of these things are quite tangible, and you can figure them out. Once again, with me today, Paul Worcester, co-founder of Simplifyy. Click the link in the show notes and learn more about what they do. Paul, I got to go, so I'll catch up with you next time, dude.
Thank you.
See ya.